So being on YouTube and TikTok is like being in a university, I swear. So recently I've learned that autistic people do not like the names high functioning and low functioning autism. That's something I didn't know. I've made videos using that terminology to describe to a neurotypical person what high functioning is considered and what low functioning is considered. But turns out that they do not like these terms. I've just learned that, and here's why.
Oh, you're autistic. You must have high functioning autism though, yeah? I want to address functioning labels for autistic people, why they're not helpful, and what I think would be better. The problem with functioning labels is that it can cause people to make assumptions about what an autistic person will be capable of. So, if you hear high functioning, you might make the assumption that my autism is very mild and that I don't need much support. Conversely, if you hear low functioning, you might make the assumption that my autism is really severe and that I'm not capable of anything. This is not to say that autistic people have differing support needs, more that you can't tell what someone's support need is based on which category of autism you've decided to put them into. Additionally, what you might decide is severe autism might not be autism that is any more severe, but instead autism with attached comorbidities like learning difficulties or speech and language difficulties. You can't know how someone's autism impacts them without getting to know them.
Okay, so that is the type of video that you come across when you're on TikTok if you mention the words high and low functioning, which the way she explains it, that's why I picked her video, I understand better. So me and you being autism parents, we understand that if we say high functioning or low functioning, you still have autism. You still need help. It doesn't matter if you're high functioning or low functioning. But I think what has been happening is in the neurotypical world, they think because the kids are high functioning, they don't need as much help as the ones who are nonverbal or a little more severe. So let's dive a little deeper and see how they want to address this issue, what words they would prefer us to use, and why behind the not using this terminology. All right, let's get into the video. Hey special family, welcome back to another video. If you're new here, hi, I'm Autism Mom, and on this channel we talk about autism and everything in between. If you'd like to be part of the family, click the subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you can be alerted every time I make a new video, and it's free. Okay guys, today's video is about high and low functioning autism and why those terms should not be used according to autistic people. I had no knowledge of it. I'm just got acquainted with it on TikTok, the university. So I think the way they explained it, from doing more research, at first I was like, what? Something else? But the way they explained it, now I understand why they don't like that terminology. And it makes sense to me not to use that terminology now that I know more about it. So I wanted them to explain it to you personally as a viewer of mine, so I can educate you on that as well, so that you don't offend someone with autism by accident, because I know you didn't mean anything with it. But here is why they do not prefer that terminology.
Hello, Anne. This video is in response to your stitch with your questions you had about your twin sons just recently diagnosed, one with high functioning autism and one with low functioning autism. A few things right off the bat that's going to help. I do not like the terms high, low functioning, and it's not a matter of being politically correct. It's actually doing a disservice to the individual. Because if I say someone's low functioning, I don't expect anything more of them. That's just their level of functioning, and I totally ignore all of their gifts and abilities. And if I say someone's high functioning, I ignore all their challenges. So I'd much rather describe the individual needs. You know, my son has autism. These are his needs. Because the spectrum's not a linear. It's not from low to high. It's a lot of support to less support. And then the individual themselves, their own spectrum is almost like a color wheel to their needs. So your high functioning son could have things that he struggles much more with than your low functioning son. Again, I rather just say my son has autism and these are his needs. You need to become the expert, learn all you can. You can start on our website reading our blog articles, and I would totally suggest really building up your community support. Just Google support groups, autism support groups near me, and get out there. And if it's hard to leave the house with twin boys, I understand that. There's so much stuff online. Hopefully this helps.
Low high-functioning labels are harmful. 1. They're outdated. High-functioning and low-functioning first appeared in a research study in the 1980s and were used to differentiate between autistic people with and without an intellectual disability. After the study was conducted, many professionals pointed out that IQ tests cannot measure variables that impact autistic people, such as executive functioning and social skills. 2. People who are deemed high-functioning often get their symptoms minimized and deal with long-term consequences. According to several studies, autistic adults who mask can experience autistic burnout, which can lead to increased anxiety and depressive symptoms, low self-esteem, suicidal ideation, and physical and emotional exhaustion. Masking can also delay receiving a diagnosis and necessary help or support. 3. Those deemed low-functioning face large amounts of stigmatization. Individuals who are labeled low-functioning are often perceived as incapable in different areas such as learning, intelligence, and more, even though this is often not the case. These individuals may also be infantized and have their strengths and capabilities undermined. Many people see the autism spectrum as a straight line, which is not the case. It looks rather like this.
So here's the first person on TikTok that's explaining what high functioning autism is.
From what I was told by my psychiatrist, the average IQ is 100. Mine is 126. I hide very well. What you are seeing is a mask. I am hyper aware that some of my features irritate the ever-loving hell out of people. And so I learned from a very young age that my features were not acceptable and that I needed to hide them at all costs. My videos are made in short snippets because I have trouble looking at myself in the eyes in the camera. This is one of the reasons why the phrase, "I just can't see it," which I have heard a bunch from people in my own life, is such a problem. I fell through the cracks because people just couldn't see it. This is one of the reasons why there is such a big push for people to get rid of the term high functioning, because the term high functioning is largely based on IQ and not actual ability. This is a quote from Spectrum News, and it says, "The term high functioning completely disregards the difficulties these individuals have on a day-to-day basis." And I do have difficulty on a day-to-day basis. You give me too much loud noise, I shut down. Too much weird light, I shut down. Too much stress overload, I shut down. I'm not mad at your question. I'm not mad at you. This is just this whole thing where the autism world is evolving. Daily, it is evolving. And it has to evolve, because if it doesn't, people like me are going to continue to get missed.
This is super random, but if you were the parent of an autistic child, this might be important for you to hear. And if you are in an autistic person's life in one way or another, you might want to hear this too. So today my son has to have an MRI. He had seizures start a couple months ago, and we're just now getting the MRI. And the prep that we had to do to go into this is insane. We watched videos, we asked questions, we emailed the doctor, we asked more questions, we watched more videos, we looked at pictures, we mapped out our route to the place on the computer. He has a map in his phone, he has the address so he can watch it. We looked at what the building looks like outside. We tried to find pictures of the hallway, but we couldn't find it. And we haven't even left the house yet. People tell me all the time that they don't think he's autistic, and that is because they don't see his struggle. I don't use the term high functioning and low functioning, but if I was going to use that term, Mason would be considered really high functioning. He's on a swim team, he's played travel soccer on a regular team, he gets straight A's at school. But the thing is that high functioning, if we were going to use that term, which I don't like, it just means that it's easier for us. It just means that his struggles aren't obvious to you and I. It just means that he's learned to mask those struggles so that it isn't an imposition for everybody else. But he's still struggling. He's still having a really hard time. We had to prepare a month out to miss a day of school, and he still can't handle to miss a whole day of school. So he's going this morning, and then he's going back this afternoon. And we stayed up all night talking about what this procedure is going to be like. And it's just an MRI. Like, it's really not that big of a deal. But to him, it's a really big deal. So I want everybody to remember the reason we don't use those terms, high functioning and low functioning, is because they don't describe the reality of what the struggles are. High functioning just means that it's easier for you. It's not easier for them.
Okay, and here's another video on why labels are harmful according to autistic people. Let's take a look, shall we?
What people think the autism spectrum looks like. High functioning to low functioning. Wrong. Getting rid of that. Check this out. Whoa! What autism actually can look like. One person who is autistic might have a lot or a little bit of each one of these. If we draw one person on this map, they might have a lot of empathy, not a lot of social awareness, a ton of repetitive behaviors, a lot of fixations, social difficulty, not a lot of that, and some great expressive language. And that's just one. Another person would look entirely different and have a different set of skills. Drop the labels. They're perfectly autistic for who they are. I love their brains. Let's go.
So let's say you want to explain what high functioning or low functioning is, but not use those labels or terminology. This person explains how you can go about explaining it. I'm still having difficulty with it, but I'm learning how not to say those terms and using other terms instead. So here's our explanation of how you can do it in a different way.
Great question. If I can't say this kid is severely autistic or low functioning or high functioning, how can I describe him? Do exactly that. Describe him. I wouldn't say Jessie, that's me, is a moderately functioning neurotypical person. I would say Jessie's the mom of 3. She has a speech clinic. She has an online program for therapists. Things get a little hectic in her day, so sometimes she benefits from Google Calendar and alerts. She needs reminders to send her kids' health screenings to the school every day. I would just describe the child. So you can say, this child is so engaging and loves being around his peers, and he requires a little bit more support when using his AAC device to communicate. So just try to do that. Focus on the child's strengths and then talk about where the child needs different levels of support. I hope that helps.
Okay, so the labels have also been changed, and according to the autism community, there's a harmful stigma that's caused by Aspergers and high and low functioning labels. So this is the explanation of the stigma.
In 2013, I was diagnosed with Aspergers, but in 2014, that diagnosis was changed to ASD, or Autism Spectrum Disorder. This change of diagnosis happened because in 2014, the term Aspergers was removed from the DSM-5. So if the terminology was excluded and high functioning and low functioning aren't even criteria, why are they still used? Well, Aspergers was based around intellectual ability, and it could be still used today because of the stigma around autism and intellectual ability. The term Aspergers came from Hans Asperger, a pediatrician in the 1940s. Heinz played a critical role in Nazi eugenics programs which sent many disabled and autistic children off to their deaths. Also known for his horrible experimentation and studies conducted on disabled children. Most of his studies around autism were based on intellect only. He frequently also used the word psychopath in conjunction with autism. He used the terms high functioning and moderate in a lot of his files. He saw IQ as the only style of functioning. So now we know where the term Aspergers comes from and why it's so connected to high functioning and low functioning. Not only is this term just harmful and related to eugenics, but also adds to the stigma around IQ and autism. These terms not only lead to stigma, but also the lack of support in other areas and challenges with autism. These are just a few reasons why I don't use those terms and don't believe those terms should be used, as they add to the stigmatization and misinformation spread around about autism.
So guys, what they're trying to say is people think autism looks like a line. One end is high functioning, one end is low functioning, something like this. But in reality, what it is, it's a whole spectrum, and on that spectrum there are different needs. And whether you're high functioning or low functioning, you can fall anywhere on that spectrum. Being high functioning doesn't mean that you don't need help, because you can talk or do certain things that someone with low functioning can't. You also need help, but in different areas, in some places more than others. But what tends to happen is that people think because a person is high functioning, they don't need as much help or don't need any help at all. So yeah, I understand why they don't like to be labeled. It makes sense to me now. So it's not this linear line that people think with high and low on one end. It's actually this full circle with different needs that fall for different kids. So some people in the community are saying that when you use these terms, it's considered an ableist term. I'll put the explanation of what ableist is. And that the autism community at large has abandoned, but people are still using the term even though it's abandoned. They're saying don't call us that and do not call us superheroes. But a mom is explaining that in certain situations she needs to use these terminologies in order to explain to healthcare workers or certain people that they are neurotypical people, that they can comprehend and treat your child the way they need to be treated, because they're sensitive to certain stuff. They're not like your regular person who can just maybe sit in an MRI machine and just go take an MRI. Maybe they need more coaxing, more softer behavior, and a more different approach. So this is the mom explaining why she sometimes uses this terminology, because it's in the child's benefit.
I have a little bit of a bone to pick with the idea that we're not going to use any labels that differentiate people who have different support levels. I understand you're like, well, you know, I have autism and I just don't want anyone to think that I'm intellectually disabled. I don't want anyone to treat me like a child. And when you use these labels, it just doesn't make me feel good about myself. But let me tell you, some of these labels actually help Lilac to stay safe and stay alive. One, I can't tell anyone when Lilac is in a heightened state where she's dealing with someone like doctors or nurses, EMT, security guards, policemen, teachers, administrators, anything. When I say autism, they immediately go into their mental Rolodex and they think of people like the good doctor. Or you, they think of you. Lilac could be like in a full spiral, like punching herself, bleeding, gouging her eyeballs out. And they'll still be like, in my mind, I feel like I can have a conversation with this child because of what I'm used to when it comes to autism, which is my uncle who is in college right now, or, you know, my sister who reads and writes and has logical moments, or some guy that I saw on television. I love that show. He's really fun and quirky. He knows so much about like model cars or something. Like, you understand what I'm saying? So Lilac is not being represented in a proper way, and because it's based off of what it is that's in their own heads. Also, she's not being cared for based off of her support levels. Now, I could have this conversation with them, but we're usually in like a heightened moment where I need to be able to say one word or two words and for them to understand, oh, I get it. And nonverbal is not enough. And Lilac isn't just nonverbal. Like, there are so many things she doesn't understand and so many reactions that she could have to, you know, authority figures or doctors or EMTs or anyone. And there's got to be a word for it. I've got to be able to say one or two words and have someone say, oh, I understand. I get it. Well, I will help you in this way. Tell us what we need to do because I understand that she is this person. When Lilac had to get an MRI, most of what we do with Lilac in the hospital, she has to get anesthesia. The doctor wrote down that she had severe autism. And the doctor told me, I know that this is probably going to make you uncomfortable. And I don't even think Lilac has severe autism. But I know the nurses will treat her the way that she needs to be treated in order to do the MRI comfortably.
So I hope you understand why this terminology is not used anymore and why autistic people get offended by the use of this terminology, because it makes people feel like they do not need as much help as a person who is low functioning. High or low, it's not one linear spectrum, it's a full spectrum with different necessities. And a high functioning person might not need this, but they might need that. And a low functioning might not need that, but they might need this. So I would like to say I understand it now. I see why you don't want that label, and I agree with you completely. I hope this video was helpful, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye.